Welcome to Let's Go Shooting, where we explore photography for beginners. I'm Matthew Livingstone, and this is episode 2, where we explore some basic settings to get you out and using your camera to capture some great images. This week I am trailside in beautiful Milverton, Ontario.
So another beautiful sunny day here in Perth East. I wanted to get started on episode 2. So coming out to a trail area here where I'm going to find a spot so we can set up and take you through some more information. I hope last week's episode brought you some interest in dusting off your camera and coming out and starting to shoot. If you're thinking about buying a camera and you want to start getting into photography, then hopefully it's helpful as well. So my last episode was to kind of trigger you to spark that interest, but today I want to be able to take you through some of the basic settings on your camera so that way you can get out and start shooting as soon as possible. Now, taking time to learn and expand. Obviously, the more you shoot, the more you learn, the more you come out and try, the better things you're going to get. You're going to see an improvement in your picture quality, and that just takes time. And hopefully I can take you through further on that journey, and we'll set up here shortly and take you through a few more steps. Okay, so we're set up here on the tripod just to make this instruction a little bit easier, but I want to take you through some of the general settings within your camera. And most cameras, obviously, every camera has something a little different. I have the Canon T6i that is on the tripod right now. So when I explain this, a lot of this is Canon centric, but when it gets into some of the other brands, it'll be a similar look. It'd just be their own twist on things. If it's Sony or Fuji or whoever, Nikon, whatever your flavor is, you'll see a lot of similarities. Now, even down to some of the more simplistic DSLR cameras, they will still have some of these selections. As you get into the hobbyist cameras up into the semi-professional and the professional, a lot of the same settings are what you're going to be changing to be able to utilize your camera. So the higher you go up, the more options, more megapixels, more money you spend, and it all depends on what you're trying to achieve. There's no need in buying some big fancy camera if you're just going to be a hobbyist and you want to go out and grab a few decent shots here and there. So at any rate, let's jump into some of the simple settings. So up on the top here of your camera, you'll see a on and off switch. This could be in a different position. Some of the other cameras, it's down lower. Sometimes it's down here on the lower part of the body, but it all depends on where it is. So the first thing you're going to need to find is your on-off switch. And we're going to get the camera on, and then we see our rotary dial. Our rotary dial here is going to take us through our modes. Again, this may look different depending on the type of camera you have, but for Canon and most, this is pretty standard. So the first thing we're going to see is a section that has a line around it that is kind of cordoned off from the rest of the selections. And what we see here is a little white dash. The white dash shows us where we're aligned. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the green one, which on this says A+. And A on this camera stands for automatic. And when we switch to automatic mode, it'll tell us a little blurb about that. And in here it says, Scene Intelligent Auto, autofocus, brightness, flash, color, tone are set according to scene. So this is your camera taking all of the calculations on its own, including evaluating the light and the conditions, and figuring out the best way to try to get you a usable image. This is a good place to start when you first pick up your camera. If you just want to try it out, you want to start getting some shots that are half decent and usable, this will get you out there and at least trying to shoot. And that is a good thing to do, is to build your confidence and be comfortable with your camera. It's okay to start here. Just realize that we need to move past here to have creative control over our images. So if the lighting is low, the automatic flash will pop up, and if you have an onboard flash, that is. Otherwise, it'll do all it can to adjust for your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO or ISO. Those are the three things the camera can really control outside of adding more light in from the flash to be able to get it into a lighted area that is properly exposed. So what we can do here is we're pointed at these flowers, and unfortunately with the camera in front of me recording this, I'm not able to get to the viewfinder here, but we'll take a picture. So there we see it autofocused, and we are, able to take a shot, and it looks pretty decent. We'll go back into it and we'll take a look. We'll zoom in. And it looks pretty decent. Exposure's not too bad. It's very bright out here today. So with the camera, it's easier for it to make a decision on taking a shot. We do see some good clarity there. So all in all, not too bad. So this will be useful. And then when you're inside or in a dimly lit area, again, the flash is going to pop up, and like that. And as soon as you press the trigger, the flash will go and it'll help light the area. Now, it's not going to make much of a difference out here today because, again, the sun is shining. It's very bright. So bright, actually, that I'm using a step-down filter on the lens, which I'll show you after, trying to compensate for some of the extra exposure that is happening today. Okay, so that is our automatic setting. Take it, go out and shoot, try it, see what it does. So the automatic without flash allows you, again, to take some good general pictures, but where you don't want the flash coming on. So in darker scenes where you've taken a picture with the flash and you didn't like that it came up, and you look at it and it looks a bit yellowy, and you want to try to do it a little bit on your own by maybe focusing in a different area so there isn't such a dark exposure, and you can do that. You can go and switch to the lightning bolt, which has the line through it, which indicates to us that there is no flash on at this time. Okay, so right here is where that indicates that. So again, today it's bright out, we can take a picture here, and it's going to take a focus on an area there with the plants in front of us, the blue sky behind us, and the field. Lots for it to focus on. But we look, and sure enough, similar shot to what we had before, because it is still utilizing its own algorithm to make up the right exposure. Next to that, we have portrait. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it's portrait shots where you're trying to have a nice bokeh or blurred background behind your camera. Now, I don't have anybody here with me today to be able to take a portrait shot, but again, we can still utilize this, and we'll aim down a little bit. And as you can hear on this camera, when you put into portrait mode, it actually changes into a burst, which you can see here outlined in the three squares right here on the screen. As well, we can see that it is moved and put the flash into automatic mode. So if it was darker, then that would, at that point, activate that flash. So let's see the pictures that it took. So we want to see if it blurred the background, which we can see it does. So right now, in our front view, which is probably about 3-4 feet in front of us, is this yellow or goldenrod plant. Behind that is some more goldenrod, which is within another 3 to 4 feet standing up. And so you can see it's blurred it. So it's done its job that we would expect from a portrait mode. When we're taking portrait photography, we want to not see so much the background. We want to see the subjects because you're there taking their picture, and what's in the background may be important, and if it is, then we change how we take that picture. But most of the time we're trying to somewhat blur that background, and the word they use is bokeh. And it is, I believe, a Japanese word that basically means that you have a nice, lightly blurred background that shows enough of semblance to understand what it is that is there, but not to the point of clarity where you can pick out exactly what is being seen in the background. So our main focus is our people. We want to make sure that they are in focus and are clear and the clarity is about them, not so much about the background when we do portraits. So we can change this a lot when we talk later about the manual mode, but one of the things that we'll talk about then is our field of view and our distances, because there is some calculation that we have to do to figure out how far we are away from a subject to be able to create that blur. In this portrait mode, it's making that decision for us. So next up, we have the ability to do close-up shots. And this is, again, another automatic feature. And as we can see, it's put the flash on automatic mode again. So there is some default settings that it's going to utilize. You can use this for trying to get a really close picture of a person, or if we wanted to go and zoom in on any of these plants in front of us, or something like food, or anything that you really want to get a nice close-up shot, this is going to help us achieve that. So we're going to take a picture here, and it wanted the flash to come on. Now we're not really close to these items because of the tripod. It's hard for me to get down there and video at the same time and really explain this. But what we want to see is good clarity and good exposure really close up.
So I've taken the camera off the tripod so I can go and take this close-up shot using the same setting, so you can see the detail that is available.
Next up, we have our sport mode. This is good for anything that something is moving. It could be vehicles, children at play, cars, buses, anything that is going along, a boat, where you're trying to get something in movement. And what that is doing is it's calculating the shutter speed it needs to keep that frame in focus that you are aiming on as it's moving past you or moving around you. So this is also put it into a burst mode, as you can see here by the multiple squares. So when we take this shot and I have nothing moving around here, unfortunately it's pretty still and quiet out here. There were some birds flying earlier, but they've all moved on. So when we do trigger this, it'll just keep shooting. And that's important when you're trying to capture something in motion, because it will be able to get those faster shots off as you are moving back and forth. And we'll do that again so you can see. And we'll go into the pictures. And we'll see that even though I was moving the camera from left to right, it's still getting things in focus within those bursts. Okay, so that is the good thing about the sport mode, is that it's able to then go in and actually capture and freeze those images for you when you are trying to get a moving object or move your camera in a faster panning motion to be able to get that fast shutter speed and those rapid shots off, and hope that you end up capturing some good clear shots of what you're looking for. The sacrifice to this is lighting often. in this mode, the camera is putting all of its emphasis on your shutter speed. So that means it's going to have to change your ISO, and it's also going to have to change your aperture. Depending on the lens you are shooting with, you may want a brighter, clearer picture, but if they have to compensate for the lighting by putting your ISO up too high, things can start to get grainy. So that's the importance of better lenses, and that's another topic that we'll discuss at some point as well. So the next mode we're going to look at here is landscape mode. Landscape is here obviously to get a nice distant picture. If you have a nice area you want to look at, here we're looking across the farm field, and we will see when we take the picture there's the cornfield and the barns and whatnot in the background. So we're using this automatic function to try to create the best landscape picture that the camera can decide for you on its own. So typically in the landscape photography, we're looking to have a foreground, a midground, and the background. So here we have foreground, which you'll see, which is the long grass in front of us. The field goes to the midground into the edge of the cornfield, and then the background will be the barn and the trees behind that. So what we want to be able to see is a foreground is something that we typically don't have a ton of focus on. It's the mid and the background is where we're going to see our clarity. So when we take this picture here, we'll see whether or not this automatic function can get us that clarity in our background and our midground. So let's zoom in on this. And we're going to come over here. So it's picking up clarity even on the foreground, which is fine. And we'll zoom in as much as the camera will allow us. And it looks like we do have some decent clarity into the background. I see a little bit, it'll be easier to tell once we get on the computer. It looks a little bit fuzzy getting further out, but we'll confirm that on that shot when we get it back onto the computer and look at it for editing. So all in all, it does okay, but again, landscape, it's going to give us that overall view, and should be able to use it on open areas with water, mountains, whatever you have in your area. We have a lot of farm fields out here, not a lot of water, unfortunately. So this is a setting you can use to kind of get that bigger picture that you're looking to achieve. So this camera has two other settings that I just wanted to touch on quickly before we wrap up. And not all cameras will have these. Again, as the cameras are evolving, they're adding more and more automatic functions that kind of take that to the next level where it's trying to help you be creative. So they have creative auto in this camera. If we go into the settings here, we're able to see right now it's on standard setting, but if I go in, there's options for vivid, soft, warm, intense, and cool. And if we scroll down, we can click through any of those and it goes into brighter, darker, monochrome. So you can choose, depending on which one you click on, you can choose a scale of how dark or intense you want that filter to be within that creative area. So this gives you a little bit of area to play with. It also gives you the ability to blur the background as well in this area. So you can control the blur as well, and the camera will help set up the settings to get you, in this scenario, this creative darker theme, a darker, and then you could do a blurred background depending on what you are trying to achieve. So that can be helpful to you as well if you're trying to find ways to be a little bit more creative without getting into manual mode quite just yet, if you want the camera to be able to help you with some of that. The other one that we have is scenes. And again, not all cameras are going to have this, but this one does. So right now it's on, when we go into the first setting of scenes, it's on kids. And it's on a standard setting, and it's on a burst with an automatic shutter. And if we come in here, we can click on the picture, and we can see that we have food, candlelight, night portrait, handheld night scene, and HDR backlight control. So this again is a way that the camera companies are trying to make it easier for the average shooter to pick up and create those shots for those specific areas, so that way you get more out of your camera. Again, you're losing some creative control here. They're getting a little bit better at utilizing the right algorithms to make these shots what you want the outcome to be. But when it gets down to it, to create a good image, we need to be working in manual mode, and we're going to cover those a little bit more in our next discussion, which should be next week's episode. But just understand that it takes a lot more understanding of your camera's functionality to work into getting those creative shots. So it's okay to play in this area for a little while, and it's okay to stay in that area if that is all you're looking to achieve. If that's all you want as a hobbyist, is to be able to put it on the right setting that your camera allows and get a good shot, that's fine. If you want to take it to that next creative level and have that artistic control, then that's where we're going to talk about things a little bit further as we continue on in this journey.
So this covers the automatic modes that you'll find on most cameras. And next week we'll get into the manual modes and the assisted manual modes. This is a little more in depth and takes a little bit more understanding. And I don't want to overwhelm you in your first week or second week of playing with your camera and figuring out some of the settings. So I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to taking this further in your next episode. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed, and hit the subscribe if you'd like to follow along and see what other journeys we go on and other tips and tricks we pull out of our hats to be able to help you get your camera out and start shooting.